welcome to this edition of Velocity Kinetics. We're doing cars and cooking again. Back by demand. Well, Russ was interested in doing it again. So, that's what I've done. Apologies, Thunderbird 1's about to start taking off. And I know the hob is filthy. But I've been cooking a few things over the weekend. And it, well, let's just say got a bit messy. A couple of times. Actually, that reminds me, I need to wipe something out of the oven. I had a nasty spill of some oil whilst making Toad in the Hole. For those who follow me on Instagram, CWhite90999. Go check them out. Look. I do need to clean the inside of this thing though. It took forever to get the landlord to put a new one in. Took forever to get the landlord to put a new bloody oven in. And it's being used. Why the hell I had to go months with an oven that didn't work properly though, that's something my cunt of a landlord will only know. So what we're talking about today is more about the state of F1. So it's kind of cars and cooking-ish, more of the state of F1 again. So, and as for those who want to know what we're cooking, I am doing a turkey and rice casserole. Don't know how well you can see that or not. I'm not 100% convinced that that's pointing at me, but we will deal with it as best as we can. That's kind of why I keep talking loud, because the camera is mounted on my kitchen window. So, the state of F1. In what an upside down weekend it was. I still haven't had a chance to watch the race. But a Toro Rosso on the podium twice in a season. Gasly giving Red Bull a bit of a fuck you for being able to get back up there. But it's sort of one of those things that proves to me, it's like, you know what, Helmut, if you'd sort of given Gasly a little bit more patience, he might have actually put the Red Bull even higher up. But you know what, the trade-off is I'm not in his position to have to make said call. That was just the washing machine trying to take off. Hence why it's the nickname Thunderbird 1. Not the coolest one, which is Thunderbird 2, and that's just undisputed fact that Thunderbird 2 is the coolest. But anyway, you got the Toro Rosso on the podium, you got Sainz getting his first podium, you got McLaren getting their first podium, granted on a technicality, that is Sainz and McLaren, because it was granted after the race. It was after Lewis Hamilton had clouted Albon. I mean, at one point it was looking like an all Red Bull podium. But in that sense, no one would be quite back quite an eye if it had been two Ferraris and a Haas, or a Haas and Alfa and a Ferrari on the podium, in whatever order they worked out to be in. But what a brilliantly upside down race, and it's been surrounded by a lot of I won't call it bad press because it's not necessarily bad, but a lot of rumours that Mercedes are toying with leaving. There was talk that Mercedes are going to sell it to Roger Penske, which if they do, I guess Penske is a good way to. They do a lot of good IndyCar. That is Penske, and you know I believe they've done F1 before. If my memory's not much mistaken. They've done Formula 1 before, granted back in the 70s, but nonetheless, it's not like they're coming in and I need to hand back that bench. They're not like they're coming in completely unknown. You've got Haas who are not sure about whether they're going to stay or not. Really, and let's say you've got Mercedes on about selling up. It's like you've got Renault possibly not staying in. It's just a mess. So really, what the state of F1, really, I think, having had a few days to think about it, having pumped out all that content as quickly as I could. By the way, please donate to us via PayPal youtube.me/Velocity Kinetics. It helps me put out more content quicker, and for instance, gets me more camera equipment, and well, just hopefully gets me more time to make more videos. But anyway, back on point. What F1 needs to look at, it really desperately needs to look at how to keep manufacturers in the sport. And I don't think we should, F1 for a moment, should be going down the route of, well, you joined in, you're signing up for a 10-year stint in Formula 1, for instance, or anything like that, because, you know, teams have got to stay in with what makes the most financial sense to them, and you can't overcommit someone doesn't want to undercommit either. But with the likes of Renault possibly leaving, granted that's been because of stuff happening in their corporate world and the fact they've been cheating. Well, I hate calling it cheating, but there is no other word for it, because they were in contravention of the regulations with the system that they had. And, you know, if you're not in contravention with, if you're going against what the rules are saying, you are cheating. So, what really does it mean that we need to do? So, like I said, we need to try and keep more manufacturers in the sport. Now, Mercedes are on about leaving, which in some ways, I mean, Bernie Ecclestone predicted it, Eddie Jordan predicted it. The fact that Mercedes have just had such an unprecedented period of dominance, it's unbelievable. I mean, I think it was 2014, or was it 2015, where it was Mercedes power on pole. I have to say Mercedes power because Williams scored a pole, but Mercedes power on the front row of the grid for the entirety of the season. That's just something you've probably not seen since Ford DFD days. But even then, Ferrari could still muster up the occasional pole to ruin those statistics. So Mercedes have sort of lost interest. You've got Renault undergoing corporate problems. You've got Haas. I don't know what it is with Haas, really. They seem to have been going backwards a lot. Now, and you've got also Alpha on about pulling out, so it would then be going back to Sauber. It's just ridiculous. I don't know what we need to do. Now, one option, and it's an extreme option, and it's not one I prefer myself, is that when you sign a team up to F1, you sign on for 10 years, barring financial ruin. You sign on for, say, 10 years. Engine manufacturers would have to have different rules. The problem is with that, though, if you're trying to encourage someone in, like an Audi, like a Porsche, or a Lamborghini, or if you're trying to encourage another racing team, like, say, for instance, Polestar, into F1, that's a very daunting prospect to then be committed to being there for that long, especially if you end up propping up the back of the grid in that entire time. You've also got the issue of the prevailing dominance in many ways of Formula E, as in that's where most manufacturers want to be, and in many ways, who could blame them? It is fast becoming the pinnacle of motorsport, or at least for now, until someone proves electric power is not the way to go. So it's really hard to know what to do. And you've got things like touring cars becoming quite interesting with the likes of World Touring Cars. You've got Lynx, Cyan, Holson Racing, doing really well as a new manufacturer into the sport. And then you've got British Touring Car, for instance. We've got MG coming back after a period of absence. You know, the F1 has got a lot of sports to compete with, and as a manufacturer, if you're looking at it purely from a manufacturing perspective and not engine supply, you're sport for choice. Heck, you've even got Peugeot announcing they're going to go back to WEC with the hypercar rules. That's, you know, seriously fantastic for them, and seriously fantastic for WEC. There's another manufacturer signing up. Somebody might take away some of the dominance away from Toyota. Just, I don't care really, as long as, well, to a point, I'm not a fan of dominance in sport, unless it happens to be Williams. But I guess that's the same with most people when they've got a team that they that's their favourite. They don't mind the dominance when it's their team. When it's not, when it's anyone else's team, they really don't like it. One chicken breast tuna. So what do you do? So what do you do to keep the teams in? Well, like I said, there isn't really a way to do it, and it's such a shame. I mean, Mercedes. I would bet you anything. You got Mercedes and Red Bull frequently. Not Mercedes. Sorry. This is the first time Mercedes have ever sort of talked about potentially leaving. But you got the likes of Red Bull frequently threatening to quit. It's like, well, actually, if Red Bull quits, it's like, hang on, whoa, it's screwing two teams. If you decide to do that, let's go with a dash of cayenne effect on the chicken. It's quite a lot now. It's a bit turkey now. Dash of cayenne, a bit of garlic. Have I got some smoked paprika down? But let's put good old classics, a bit of salt, a bit of pepper. Small bit of paprika. Don't know why I had to say it so weirdly. So you got them frequently threatening to quit, but it's one of these things. It's like it's a threat that always has to be taken seriously. But no one actually knows whether anyone will take it seriously. If that makes sense. As in, someone goes, right, I'm going to leave. The best way I can describe it is, at the moment, it sort of feels a lot like. For anyone who watches Whose Line Is It Anyway, there's a clip where Sings From a Hat. I think it's Sings From a Hat, or is it World's Worst? No, World's Worst Cop Show, I think is what it is. There's a bit where Wayne Brady's sort of starting off and going, "Freeze, put your hands in the air," and it starts descending as in well, you could say the madness starts increasing, whichever way you want to look at it. But Wayne Brady basically starts with the whole "freeze, come on, I mean it, I'm serious, come on, give me my gun back, I'm telling my mom." It's sort of obviously a lot more funny than that, but it's kind of what their quit threats feel like. It sort of feels like, I'm telling, I'm not getting my way, and I want my mum. And that really, like I say, sums up what F1's like some days. And this is kind of what I was getting at the point about changing mentality, change the way they do things. Like, yeah, because that is kind of how it goes. They're not winning, if people aren't winning, they're not interested. When you think about it, you've got the likes of Williams fighting on at the back. He's getting a slow cooker. You've got the likes of Williams continue to fight on at the back, and they're not threatening to quit. It'd be easier for Williams just to say, right, well, you know what, we fucked up, we're shut and shot, bye-bye. But they're not gonna, and that's a really good way to go about it. At least for the time being. Really slow cooker. That's why I think they can't quite do the whole, you're committed to F1 for X number of years. But they've got to look at something like it, because if you're threatening to leave constantly, F1 needs to eventually go, alright, bye-bye, see you later, goodbye. Sort of when you start threatening to leave a child at home, really, I guess, when they're not doing what you want, it's sort of, F1 needs to do a little bit of We don't need Bernie Ecclestone style discipline, but we need a bit of discipline. And, you know, people to realise you're trying to quit, there's going to be consequences. If you do actually decide to go ahead with it. In many ways, I don't think F1 would have that hard of a time trying to get someone to take someone else's slot. Really? You wouldn't have that hard of a time getting... Ferrari probably have, to a point, or the Fiat Chrysler Group would happily sign up another one from the stable. They might sign up Maserati into the program, although there's rumours of what's going to happen with Haas. It's going to happen that they're going to become Maserati or Haserati, as is the common way the name is messed around with. So I don't know what the best thing is to do. I know some people might say, you know, why are you pointing out if you haven't got a suggestion? Right? It's more a case of it needs to be addressed. And I don't really think F1 can cope. I don't think F1 can cope if more teams left. Now I do sign up to the theory, more because it's like, it's more a case of it's the way the automotive market is moving. You're an idiot if you think otherwise. Until hydrogen is sort of proved as a good way to go about things or gains more popularity, electric is the way to go. So until F1 and Formula E merge, which I think will happen eventually, there's no real place to go. And then if you say, for instance, if Red Bull left F1 to go to Formula E, they would probably be covered in mired in so much stuff because, like, well, you know, the moment you don't get what you want, you're going to quit. And Red Bull often seems to forget, but you know, you spent a long time propping up the back of the grid. It wasn't until 2009 when you got the right regulations in place that helped you, not as in they spun the regs to make it beneficial for them, until they worked out how to get the regulations to work. They had a brilliant design and they got it all in motion, they got it all in line, and you know, they sort of stayed there since. And because of their dominance, they then attracted more good staff, which in turn meant more performance, which meant better staff, which meant more performance, and it was a forever increasing circle, which you know is not, let's say, it's not a bad thing. Just, you know, Red Bull need to watch what they say, otherwise someone's going to call them on it, and they've got Toro Rosso in the game, or AlphaTauri is going to be known next year. But anyway, F1 needs to address that that mentality of, well, I'm going to quit, or you know, well, we've done everything we want to leave. It's like, and did Queen stop when they got Bohemian Rhapsody into number one? That's my question. Like, Queen didn't stop. Did Fender stop making guitars because they made a brilliant Stratocaster? Did Gibson stop when they made the Les Paul? No, they kept going. Now, let's say F1 needs to badly address that. One thing, I'm going to get off this up because I'm just disappearing off in different tangents and not linking it all together, but ultimately, F1 needs to do something about the teams, as in if they're going to threaten to quit, then fine, fuck off, is kind of my argument. Something else F1 needs to consider doing, we've mentioned getting rid of blue flags. Now, they did trial it, and I think it was, granted the way they trialled it and what they were doing didn't work very well, but I think they need to give it another crack. And I think it's banning team radio. So what I mean is in greatly reducing team radio, is in basically down to, right, if you stay out, the car's gonna retire. If you continue to go around, the car's gonna conk out. You need to retire the car. or beyond the driver going, right, I'm coming into the pits, lads, I'm coming in, sort of thing. You know, it should be really down to, they need to, how do I put it? They need to put F1 back in the hands of the drivers. So you give the call for the pit stop, not some. Don't get me wrong, fantastic brains on the strategists, and I mean, I don't think I could do their job very well at all, or at least not for very long, without becoming very, very cross. But I think it needs to go back to the drivers. It needs to go back to the drivers. Put it back in the hands of the steering wheel and not on the keys of the laptop. The only exceptions being, like say, have to be a handful of exceptions for things like there's been an incident up ahead, there's a person on the track, pit lane's blocked, something like that. It has to be a handful of exceptions, but and obviously at the end of the race, sort of well done. But otherwise, get rid of the team radio. Put it back in the hands of the drivers. They make the calls. Now the other thing I think F1 needs to look at F1 really needs to look at is just the corporateness of it. Now, what do I mean by corporateness? What I mean is, if you look at the Silverstone Trophy a few years ago, it was a giant fucking Santander logo. The trophies at the moment, they're all Heineken logos. Now, don't get me wrong. If I was playing for a Formula 1 race, if I owned a company that had an iconic logo, I would want my logo to be part of the trophy. For instance, if Ferrari sponsored the Monza Grand Prix, so if it was like a Ferrari, the Formula 1 Italian Grand Prix at Monza, or however you want to word it, and then Ferrari insisted the Prancing Horse being part of the logo, the Prancing Horse being part of the trophy. That, I can kind of understand. When you got Heineken logos all over the track, all around the edge of the track, and on the start light gantry and everything like that, the last bloody thing you need is a Heineken Star trophy. That is the last bloody thing you need. It should just be a nice dish or whatever it is. Vettel made a comment that one of the trophies he won recently was like plastic and just generally crap, and I wouldn't be at all surprised by that. He doesn't mince his words. He knows what he's saying with knowing the full consequences of what he's saying. So, I say they need to adjust the level of corporate to it. The interviews when the drivers want to go out the car, I preferred them actually after they had the celebration and things. But at least that said, you're going to get more raw feeling off the driver. If the driver feels really hard done by, then you're going to get unfiltered, uncensored Valtteri Bottas, for instance, or Vettel, or whoever. F1 really needs to consider more spec parts, cut costs, as mentioned in the cost cutting video, they really need to consider it, and those onions are starting to affect my eyes. Oh god. But they really need to consider it. Don't get me wrong, it's brilliant that everyone makes their own bits and there's so many variants on the same part, but there has to come a point where it's just like, okay, this is just not viable anymore, especially if you want to encourage some new Minardi style teams onto the grid. It's just not gonna happen. The problem is there's just so much to mention, and there's so much wrong with such a brilliant, what to me is a brilliant sport, on both on the engineering level, the personal level. They need to, I appreciate F1 is all about now trying to go carbon neutral and the like, and it's very good, they need to consider it, and I think they should see one of the other videos I did about what the best thing is to do with the travel logically. I think it might have been State of F1 2, as in part 2. Put in some mushrooms. Mushrooms are weird food, they fill you up loads, like tomatoes, but if you were to look at them, they were the last food on the planet. You would think that's going to keep me full. Prepping a week's worth of food here. This week I'm working 1 till 9. And don't want to, but anyway, me and Sarah and I are going to be like ships in the bloody night. I hate it. But anyway, where was I? So F1, yeah, it needs to consider more spec parts. I also think maybe they think more races. I'm not sure more is the way to do it. Don't get me wrong, we need to introduce F1 to more countries in many aspects. I never thought in my lifetime that I'd have thought we would have raced in India. I would never have thought we would have raced in India in F1. I never thought I'd have seen the day. Never mind the fact we've had 2 Indian drivers in Formula 1. So we've got to do what we can to introduce it to more people, whether that's just to get people encouraging the engineering side of things, or whether you want to get people in on the driving side of things. But either or, they've still got to be getting them through the door. I don't know what the best thing is to do with that. I'm on the fence. If more works, brilliant. If it doesn't, that's a huge waste of money. But then again, sometimes you've got to spend to know that that's not going to work. I honestly don't know what else to say in relation to what to do about the state of F1, because just because the points I've picked out and picked up on doesn't mean it's going to be the same for everyone. I think F1 needs to become a bit more diverse, and I don't mean as in skin colour diverse. F1 needs to encourage more women in. We need some women drivers. I honestly thought Susie Wolff would have had a crack in an F1 car. I realise now what I've just said, and that is a very, very bad choice of words, and probably in some ways a good reason why women aren't, probably not wrong to say it's a good reason, as in probably why they steer clear, because of those low-level puns. What I meant is in, I'd have thought she'd have had a crack in at a race, as in that year I think Valtteri run over a drunk cover and hurt his back and had to have some surgery, if I remember rightly. I thought she'd have been given a go, because she was there, she was ready to hop in the car, and Williams said no. I think she said that's the year she realised that she wasn't going to get a race, which I think is unfair. Massively. I think F1 also needs to consider, well, it might fall down more down to who does the VT and TV coverage, really. But there's a feature, and I think I've shared a couple of the videos onto Velocity Connector before. If not, it was my intention to, and I completely forgot. There was a series of videos quite a few years ago where Sir Jackie Stewart, and I'm talking quite a few years ago, I think it was in the 80s, where I think it was part of a TV series he was doing where we got to drive a bunch of different F1 cars. But I think F1 really needs to consider whether it's whoever it is that gets to do it. They need to do a feature where it's someone, a neutral party, a neutral but pro driver, so say for instance Chandok, Anton Davidson, heck, even Martin Brundle, get to drive all of the current season's F1 cars. You get to drive all of that current season's F1 cars and compare them, basically. Now, Jackie got to do that quite a lot at Paul Ricard. We got to drive, because that's, if you read his autobiography, that Ferrari wouldn't let him drive, because like, well, why is Ferrari good enough for him now but not when we wanted him? How bitter the old man as an Enzo Ferrari could be. You know, I think something like that would be it would also be a brilliant way to ensure, for instance, we all sit there and love to armchair pundit. But it'd be a brilliant way of someone saying, actually no, you know what Kubica, say for instance Kubic's in the back, it's like, actually no, he is pretty much sort of one of those things like, well, actually no, Russell's doing an extremely good performance because the way the time Kubica's putting in is about as good as it can normally do. So Russell, say for instance, found a good way to tune in with the Williams, or actually that Alpha is really good in these sort of corners. They just can't seem to activate it all the time. You know, and I mean as in just have the cars run with, let's say, Chandok at the wheel, for instance. Do a complete comparison between all the vehicles, and then off we pop to the races. It would be, like I say, brilliant for content. It would really highlight the differences between all of the cars. But the problem is getting everyone to agree, and I don't. This is why I say it has to be a neutral third party. And while someone like Chandok would drive him pretty quick, he wouldn't be out there trying to put the best timing on the board to get rehired by an F1 team as such. As in, let's say for instance, if you've got Alonso to do it, because Nando's got his own. Because Fernando doesn't really believe in anyone beyond himself, he'd effectively be putting in times to say, you know, I can still drive, blah blah. But it's such a tough one to know what else to say to do. F1 needs to do a bit more on its social media. It's massively improving. It's going in the right direction. It needs to do a little bit more, maybe a few more competitions for things and like, because I'm sure when I was younger they used to do, unless it was ITV that did it in conjunction with F1, I don't remember, but I'm sure F1 used to do competitions of enter here and get into this race sort of thing. Now I can't, like I say, I'm going to have to wind it up because I can't, not as in I can't cook and talk, more as in I can't think of what else to say without just wandering off on thousands of different tangents, because there are, I know thousands might be a bit of an extra, might be a bit of a exaggeration, but seriously, there are so many different ways to go about fixing F1. The one thing that it just cannot afford to do, which I'm quite worried that it will just do, is it can't just sit there and go, nope, everything's fine. Because in many ways it's done that for several years, and this is why we find ourselves in the current conundrum that we're in now. It's sort of head in the ground. Wake me when we fix this sort of situation. And I don't know about anyone else, but I for one can't stand that. It's one of these things. F1 is a sport that requires so much flexibility, and it's filled with people who just won't be flexible, or cannot be flexible, or they'll be flexible on weird terms, and we just can't afford to let F1 get like that. Because the moment we let F1 become like that again, we've lost the sport. We'll have lost it. It'll be consigned to history. And, you know, I don't know, it's just... It's trying to talk about it and think about it without getting really depressed over it, because, like I say, in many ways, F1's shooting itself frequently in the foot. Oh, actually, I just thought of something else that's popped into my mind. F1 should not become a Tilke dependent series, as in we shouldn't be relying solely on Hermann Tilke designed tracks. And I think every once in a while we need to consider looking at what tracks are already in existence and see whether it'd be better to go there. So kind of on the point I mentioned a few episodes ago was about F1 needs to be willing to experiment. Why not get a couple of teams to turn up at Mugello and follow each other around all day? As in, you'll be reimbursed for the time and the parts and the engine. You can get a new engine, which we'll pay for. It's just for these testing miles and developments, and that's it. I know it'll be bloody difficult to police, but still. It you know, go to Mugello, or you know what track I think would be brilliant for overtaking. I just found it hard to race on Forza. I just don't know why. I just can never do very well on it. The Le Mans Bugatti circuit. That would probably... Jesus, I've got chicken here. It's still not cooking. It's been on for ages. Maybe I'm trying to do it slowly because it's got to go in a casserole. I just think we've got the Bugatti circuit in Le Mans, for instance, might not be wide enough. It might be too bumpy, but we don't know until we put an F1 car on it. And you know, there are a lot of tracks in the world that have a lot of promise, like the New Delhi track had a lot of promise. They just never delivered. But then that said, we've got different aero rules now, so why not go back and see? Because I don't know what will be happening with that racetrack actually in use that much at the moment. Or the Korean track, it's sort of, it's not, I don't think it's quite abandoned, but they spent all that money to build it and get it there, and for what? For it to sit in the middle of the swamp. I bet you it were a bit of a swamp. Then again, I never saw it when it was peeing it down. At least it always seemed to be on the TV coverage. You know, I don't know what the right thing is to do, but I do know that we can't give one person a monopoly on the racetracks. Where we go, who designed them. We shouldn't lose any more of the greats off the calendar. We need to keep Monza on there, we need to keep Spa, we need to keep Suzuka. Because Suzuka has never really produced a boring race that I can think of. They've always been very entertaining. Aside from the year Jules had his accident that killed him, they've always been very entertaining. They've always produced good results. You've even had the likes of Kamui Kobayashi get his one and only F1 podium. You've had the likes of Jenson Button win there, even though you'd think, some people would say he would never win. At that track at least, where he often felt like he wouldn't. You know, and then when the number of championship deciders that have been decided there. So I guess it all boils down to F1 needs to be willing to change. But the other thing, I think, I don't know really what to think. F1 has shown it's willing to get more up to date. It's shown it's willing to get with the program. I'm just not sure how committed it is to it, and I sometimes wonder whether we look at too much stuff through rose-tinted glasses. And this is what it used to be, and so on and so forth. And yes, cracking America with F1 would be brilliant. Why not have? Here is a crazy idea. Now bear with me, it's quite literally just come into my head now. But here is a phenomenally crazy idea, but Super GT and DTM have done it, Trans Am do it when they run the different classes of vehicle on the track at the same time, Le Mans do it, WEC do it. Why not have an IndyCar F1 mashup race? I think the F1 cars would be the fastest, so they'd have to start in front. What brilliant motivation for those F1 teams if they aren't doing so well, as in like you can't even outpace an IndyCar. And what brilliant clout for, say, Honda-powered IndyCar, if like your Honda IndyCar has nearly beaten a Mercedes-powered Formula 1 car runs to the back of the field, but still, I think it would be fantastic. Like I said, a lot of kinks to work out in that plan, but you want to increase spectacle, you want to increase entertainment, you want to get the American audience watching. And you want to see how, say, former F1 drivers who've gone over to IndyCar do, and Vicky Verky, well, it's not Vicky Verky because they don't hardly ever cross over the other way. But it might encourage IndyCar crossovers to F1. And I don't think that I can recall. I don't think we've had one since Bourdais. Although, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. So, you know, I just don't know what, like I say, I don't know what the right thing is to do. I just know F1 sometimes feels like it's not doing a fraction of the right things to sort itself out, and or at least it's got the wrong people's interests at heart. It's like you've got to consult the fans more, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. You know, I don't know what the right thing is to do. I don't know what the wrong thing is to do either. I just know we've got to keep looking, keep searching, be open to the prospect of change. Get Lewis Hamilton out of Mercedes, haha, joke. Sorry, I thought I keep having problems with someone keeps opening my back gate. I think it's delivery men, to be honest, looking for somewhere to leave something. But you know, we've got to look, we've got to learn, we've got to change. got to adapt and overcome. And I don't know how else we're going to do it other than by being open to all the opportunities, all the possibilities, and just being ready to say, you know. And I guess maybe the biggest crime F1 has is it's seldom. I mean, who in their right mind likes admitting when they're wrong? Nobody does. That might just be Sarah on her lunch break. But nobody likes admitting when they've made a mistake. No one likes admitting when they're wrong. But F1 has got to learn to do it, and it just won't. But so just wrapping up here, I'm just getting my basmati rice ready. I haven't really talked much about the cooking side of things. So I've got onions, I've got mushrooms, I've got celery, I've got carrot, I've got chicken and turkey just finishing off in the pan. Sometimes I would admit when I've done chicken in the pan, it's drier than it should be, but I'd rather have drier chicken but know it's been thoroughly cooked than be eating something I'm sat there thinking, what in the hell? I've done this with just normal long grain rice before. I've actually swapped out to what the recipe says with basmati. We'll see whether it's any different. Like I say, this is a week's worth of food being prepped. It's working 1 till 9. I don't know about anyone now following who works until stupid o'clock in the evening, aside from my manager, I know is a fan of the page. But the fact is when you finish at 9 o'clock at night, you're coming in, the last thing you want to do is cook. And then the fact that if you've been working overtime like I am, 3 shifts this week, so I'm actually working 11 AM till 9 PM, you don't actually want to do anything. You just want to come in, get your shower and go to bed. You know, you still got to make, not for me at least, I've still got to make something to go to take to work, make food the next day. I'm just sorting out some stock, getting that into position in my jug of bigness, wherever it is.